Hello again, this is Carol King, the developer of Custom Home Builder Solutions software, also known as CHS. I am continuing in a series of videos about setting up your books when you first get CHS, and this is a full accounting program. So yes, we do need to get your books balance forward set up properly, but I've clicked Setup and Help, and under CHS Setup Steps, we have progressed through some of this, and the last video talked about setting up chart of accounts and balance forwards. This video is going to be about posting prior period payables. First of all, before you do that, you need to watch the video about setting up vendors, because we need to have the vendors that we'll be using for posting our prior period payables bills. This has to do with posting prior period payables bills that ties to your accounts payable balance forward on your chart of accounts, and we'll get into that. So first of all, one of the steps here you'll see is gather prior period data, and you get a little note when you click that when the help system opens up for training tutorials that CHS has already put in some words in the search box, so all you need to do is click the magnifying glass to see what I'm interested in talking about. Now there's no video icon here, it's just a document, a help document to help you just see a document about some of the steps about gathering your prior period costs, and it also talks about revenues. We are actually talking about gathering all unpaid accounts payable invoices as of the balance forward date. After you've entered all your balances forward, it may be necessary to post some prior period detail for the balance forwards. For example, if there is an accounts payable balance forward on your books, the related unpaid invoices must be posted. Not just need to be posted, must be posted, because you'll probably be posting a check after the end of your balance forward date. So also, if you want to enter prior revenues and cost details, we will have in our next video how those would be posted. In this one, we will focus on posting the total of unpaid accounts payable invoices as of the balance forward date, which should equal the balance forward that was posted to the prior period accounts payable account, and I'll explain why we're using that here in a second. Unpaid invoices as of the balance forward date are referred to as prior period unpaid invoices. I'm going to close that and close that. And then we'll just jump on to post prior period payables as one of the steps that we're doing. And I got another note saying there's already something ready in here to search for. So I did that, and you'll see that there's the one that I just did, gather prior period costs. Post prior period unpaid payables is the one that we are going to focus on today. So I'm going to go ahead. Once I finish this video, it will be behind this video button. I'm going to go ahead and click the help document to open that so that we can sort of use it as a guide as we go through this video. If, again, you have a balance forward for accounts payable on your books, that balance forward should have been posted to the prior period accounts payable account on the chart of accounts window. So let's take a quick look at our chart of accounts in this demo company. I'll minimize this PDF, go ahead and close the help that opened it, and go back to the home main menu that's up here in the tab. Let's just collapse this one and look around for chart of accounts here. You should have already been there by now if you've been setting up your balance forwards. And let's open the chart of accounts. First of all, I'd like to mention that when in the previous videos we had a place talking about setting up control accounts. Control accounts are ones where you tell CHS where to post things. So if you enter a bill to pay, CHS needs to know what GL account on your chart of accounts to post the offsetting entry to accounts payable. So you put that here, and it needs to know if you have any prior period accounts payable, which account that you would be posting that to. If you load the NAHB chart of accounts, these will already be here. So that's how CHS knows what to use while you're posting your prior period accounts payable. Just wanted to point that out. So let's slide down to where accounts payable is, which we saw was 2110. So I came to here, and we see that there's a balance in prior period accounts payable. As mentioned in the previous video, when you're working on your balance forwards, if you click this button for accounts payable trade to put in your accounts payable, which would make sense, that's what you'd be trying to do, you'll be getting a message that said this is the account selected as the accounts payable control account. In order for CHS to handle posting the unpaid payables detail behind the balance forward for accounts payable, the balance forward for AP must be posted to the GL account selected as the control account for prior period accounts payable. And I talk about the control accounts and that you should see more help information in the help docs. So you can't post a balance forward to the actual accounts payable trade account right away. We are going to post some prior period accounts payable, and what CHS is going to do is take it out of this prior period accounts payable by, quote, debiting, putting a positive amount, and moving it to accounts payable trade, so that when you're finished posting the detail behind the prior period accounts payable, this will go to 0. So I just wanted to point that out here, and we'll come back and take a look at how that is handled. In this case, we have put $5,150 as our balance forward basically for accounts payable, but we need to enter the detail of the invoices in CHS because they are unpaid as of your balance forward date, and so therefore need to be in unpaid accounts payable as individual invoices that you will pay out of CHS after your balance forward date. So I just wanted to point that out, and now we'll go close this. We could leave it open and refresh it later. Going to go back and open our help document that I had open and minimized. You should have a list of the unpaid accounts payable invoices that were unpaid as of the due date. The total of those unpaid invoices should equal the balance forward posted to prior period. We happen to have 2 invoices that we're now going to post. They are handled differently than current invoices, so they will not interfere with balance forward accounts for your books. Basically, to post your prior period unpaid payables, you will go to prior period payables under post new payables and charges on the home tabs. Now this help document, before I close it, let's don't do it quite yet, shows the window that we'll be entering on, and it shows some information here. And then it shows everything about every field on the window and what the rules are. So you could be looking at those. But since I'll be demonstrating, we're not going to read through every one of those right now. You can use this to look at that. So here we go. Let's go back to the Home tab, which stays in tabs. See how the chart of accounts stays open here? The Home tab. And we're going to go to Post New Payables and Charges, like it said, and we're going to click Prior Period Payables. We're going to get a little menu that's just strictly for prior period payables that you won't ever be using again in the future once you get going with CHS. But here it is. There's the help we pointed to about prior period. And this says Post Prior Period Bills and Costs. Now, like I said, we have 2 invoices. Our first invoice is going to be related to a job and is a job cost that we're going to enter. And the vendor, hopefully you've set up your vendors that you need for posting any unpaid payables, is called Audio Video Environments. And what happens when I selected that is some default GL numbers that I set up for audio video came in. Default cost codes that we've gone over in previous setup help came in. And that's about it that dropped in, not a job yet. But first of all, you need to do a description of some kind that says what this is for, but I don't know for sure what it's for. I'm just making stuff up, so maybe I just put audio video environments. And what will drop in is your balance forward date on this, because it knows it's a post prior period costs. But you can use the actual dates of those invoices and change the dates here if you like, and what the due date is, so that'll show up in unpaid payables when you're looking for things that are due. I'm not going to on this one, and I'm going to just use invoice number 12345. If there's an invoice number on the bill, use that invoice number. If not, quite often we use 6 digits for the date of the invoice. Like I said, this is related to a job cost, so hopefully you have your job set up for things that are in progress by now after going through the previous steps. Our job is H11 River. Once I selected that, the department CH dropped in from the job, and the GL number dropped in from the job. and would change if it was different for what we set up as a default GL number for the job for posting job cost. It would change. Let's see what happens when we put in some other job, like a property that we're managing, a rental property. Notice that the GL number changed and the department changed because these are what we attach to this job. In this case, this is a rental property, so when you're entering costs for this property, you set up that you'd like it to default to rental property maintenance. So we're going back to H11 River, and these changed, and the general ledger number on your chart of accounts, 1430, in the NAHB chart of accounts is a work in progress account, which most builders use if they're using NAHB to post their job costs. It's a whole other video. So all that happened, and the default cost code for audio video environments dropped in, but if I needed to change that to something else like phone, TV, pre-wire, or intercom, or security pre-wire, I can do that. We'll leave it at stereo pre-wire just because. This markup percent drops in by looking, if you have a job budget entered already, it's going to look to the job budget for the markup percent for this particular cost code and this job from the budget, and drop that in for you for cost plus jobs and using this in a draw request, cost plus markup draw request. So that just drops in. You can probably ignore it if you want to. The cost type, if you watch the setting up cost codes related to this cost code, will drop in, but you could always change that. And if the vendor was set up to get a 1099, has the default, that will drop in here. If there's for some reason this would not be included on a 1099 for the current year, you could set that to none. But the important thing is most of the time, over here to get the price in, the amount of the invoice, you'll probably leave the quantity at 1 and put in a unit price for what the amount of the invoice is, because the total of the invoice will be quantity times unit price. Now if that invoice had 2 or 3 jobs, you might be putting, or 2 jobs, you might be putting 0.5 to split it in 2, and then the total of the invoice here to get the amount. But we're just going to put in 5,000 for this invoice. And here's the important thing right now. We want to put this as a status of unpaid. By making it unpaid, CHS, when you submit this, will take this out of prior period accounts payable and move it in to accounts payable behind the scenes. So since this is unpaid, we don't have a check date and you won't be able to enter one, and we don't need a check number and you won't be able to enter one. They'll be disabled, and we are ready to submit this. That's our first bill that we have, so let's submit it. And what I'd like you to do is look at prior period entries that were unpaid as of the balance forward date, and there's our one entry that was unpaid right then. Now remember, our balance forward for prior period accounts payable was $5,150, and we have 2 invoices that total to that. You might have a whole bunch of unpaid ones. So let's go ahead and enter another bill that is actually not a job cost to City of Austin Utilities, and see what dropped in. As we're seeing some various things like a cost code and a GL number that is for work in progress, but in this case we're doing City of Austin Office Electrical, and let's say it's dated 12/15 instead, and that it's due 01152002 for due date, just because. And most often on your utility bills you do not have an invoice number, so I'm using 6 digits for the date. And I'm going to leave the job H here, and what the job H is considered like your house overhead job, because we do need to have a job in every single thing because this is a job costing. And just think of the H job as no job. But I'm going to change the department to OH here for overhead, and I'm going to select a different GL number for this, that is Utilities Admin Office. And the cost code I'm going to change to 0, because as you get to know CHS, you would not put a cost code in here if it's not a job cost. That's how you say this is not a job cost, it's our job H. Just going over a few things there on purpose, but normally you should set up another vendor for the City of Office that has the default. You might say put a default description in that is this, and maybe your vendor name, you might put City of Austin office to indicate that. City Austin and then OFC for your vendor code, so that you have two of them. I just happen to have one of them here. So that all this would drop in and that this GL number would drop in, and you wouldn't be doing all of those. I just wanted to demonstrate how it's dropping in things based on the vendor and what you put there. But you need to pay attention that maybe this time you're posting it to something else. Now the bill was for $150, and I'll put the status of unpaid. So that's our two bills. We entered one for $5,000 and one for $150. And I hope that wasn't too confusing changing all these. I just wanted you to be aware that you need to look at each of these fields and make sure you're posting these to the right things. Now what I'd like to point out is that when CHS submits this, it's going to do an in and out entry to the GL number so that it will not interfere with your other balance forwards on your chart of accounts, because this electricity would have been included already on your balance forwards, and also the work in progress would have been included on your balance forwards. So I'd like to submit this, and then let's take a look at the prior period entries that were unpaid, and we are totaling to $5,150. So I've closed out posting the prior period unpaid payables window, and I'd like to go back and check the chart of accounts real quickly to see what's happened there with our prior period unpaid payables. So let's scroll down to that liabilities area down here, and notice that prior period accounts payable is now 0. We started with the balance forward over here of this, but we have made entries that have cleared it out and moved it on into accounts payable trade. If we drill down on what's going on with that prior period accounts payable account, you can see that we entered our balance forward, which was a credit of $5,150, but when we posted those two things to City of Austin and Austin Video, behind the scenes, CHS debited this prior period accounts payable account. And if on these windows like this, you look at what the journal is, you're going to see the entire journal entry that was created for this record when it was posted. And let's take a close look at that. Remember, we selected 1430 for the Austin Video as our GL number, and we put in 5,000 and a cost code and a job code, and that's what happened when we submitted. This entry was made, but then CHS went behind the scenes to that same GL and put a minus 5,000 to the job code but a 0 cost code. And what I'd like to explain about that is that this entry right here, because it has a cost code other than 0, will show up on this job cost reports for this job, but this one will not. And this is the way in a minute when we start doing paid job costs, the same thing's going to happen, in that there's going to be an in and out entry. The reason for that is so that the balance forward that we put in for our 1430 direct construction costs or work in progress will not be affected for things for this job. It's just an in and out. We're putting the detail in a way behind those codes. So it goes in and goes out so that we're not interfering with balance forwards that we put in for this GL account. This will make sense to most accountants, I hope. And then you can see that CHS did that debit to prior period accounts payable and credited accounts payable for that entry. Hopefully that makes some sense to you. One good way to make sure that your balances for $5,150 are right for that date is to go to all payables records and look for accounts payable aging. Accounts payable aging, if you put in a certain date, it's forcing you to use the calendar here. So we need to go to 2001. On this particular screen, you have to use the calendar, unfortunately. We need to go to December, and then we want December 31st. December 31st, 2001, the accounts payable account on your balance sheet, etc., will show $5,150 on December 31st. When we were looking at the chart of accounts, we were looking at it as of today, way into 2020 when I'm doing this video, and so it had a different balance. But you can come in here, put in a certain date, see what the balance would be on your balance sheet, the control accounts payable for 2110, and this is the total of unpaid invoices as of that date, which you can look at right here. And you can see these two invoices totaling to $51.50. Now this is a screen that your accountant might use at the end of the year, which might have a whole lot more totaling to there, so they can see the invoices, and also they can see them grouped by GL account. But this is a way, when you're entering those prior period accounts payable, to make sure that you have the total as of a certain date being correct, that this would be your open accounts payable on that date. So that's a good way to sort of look at it, reconcile it, and feel comfortable about what you've entered and how you've cleared out your prior period accounts payable. Let's take just a quick look at our help document about prior period unpaid payables. It has a section here to show you what screen to go to if you made a mistake for deleting this unpaid payables, and we'll look at that in just a second. It also has some tips for looking at, we were already looking at unpaid payables as of the balance forward date, and we already went and looked at the accounts payable aging. I showed you that, but information about that is here in this help document. And you might want to review the trial balance, which it's giving you how to get there to financial statements, put in that date for financial statements, do a trial balance, and see as of 12/31 if your accounts payable looks correct on the trial balance for the entire company. So you have some steps there for that. We won't spend the time to go through that. I'll just go back to here, show you the home main menu, and we're going to go look at unpaid payables, and we'll go to the unpaid payables here. We'll open the entire unpaid payables, which is as of today, actually way into 2021. Let's do a search for everything that has an invoice date just through 12/31/2001. And you see that now we're just seeing the two that we entered. If I wanted to delete this, I could, because it is in unpaid. If I needed to delete it and redo it because I did something wrong, you use the red X button. It's going to say it's a prior period entry and verify that it could be deleted, and you would continue to delete the record. But I'm going to not delete it. Cancel, do not delete. When you delete it, there will be an audit record posted that this entry has been deleted. Just wanted to show you that in case you think, oh no, I need to change the stuff that I put in for unpaid accounts payable balances forward. I hope all of this helps you get that done. I know it's a pain in the neck to start trying to do all the balance forward stuff and get everything tied in before you start a new program, but hang in there. You won't have to do much about prior period anymore, except that in the next video, if you want all the detail behind jobs that are in progress, you will be using that same prior period window just to get those entered, and the next video will be about that. Thank you for watching.